The snow fell at Soldier Field the way it always does, in January. Sideways. Relentless. The kind of cold that makes you question every decision that brought you to this moment. On the field below, two franchises with radically different philosophies collided in a game that would end one team's season and validate the other's entire organizational strategy. The Chicago Bears, in their first playoff appearance since 2020, represented the patient path. Tear it down, accumulate draft capital, find your quarterback, build around him. Trust the process. The Los Angeles Rams represented something else entirely. Never tear it down. Never accept a losing season as necessary. Trade the future for the present. Reload rather than rebuild. Win now. Figure out the rest later. The Rams won 20-17 in overtime. Harrison Mevis kicked a 42-yard field goal through the frozen air, and Los Angeles advanced to the NFC Championship game for the third time in 8 seasons under Sean McVay. The Bears went home. Their magical season ended by an interception in overtime, the same way so many magical seasons end. But the final score is the least interesting part of this story. What matters is what these two franchises represent, what their collision reveals about how to build a winner in modern professional football, and why the answer is far more complicated than either approach would suggest. The Bears arrived at this moment through suffering. The 2024 season was a disaster of historic proportions. Matt Eberflus was fired mid-season, the first in-franchise head coach firing in Bears history. The team finished 5-12. Caleb Williams, the first overall pick, was sacked 68 times, more than any quarterback in the league, the third highest total in NFL history. The offensive line was a catastrophe. The play calling was incoherent. Whatever promise Williams showed was buried under pressure, confusion, and organizational dysfunction. Then came the offseason. Ryan Poles, the general manager, made his move. He hired Ben Johnson away from Detroit, where Johnson had built one of the most explosive offenses in modern NFL history. Johnson had been the most coveted coaching candidate for 3 consecutive years. He finally said yes to Chicago. Within days of taking the job, Johnson and Poles began reconstructing the roster around a single principle: protect the quarterback. In a 24-hour stretch in March 2025, the Bears traded for guard Joe Thuney and guard Jonah Jackson, then signed center Drew Dahlman to a significant contract. The interior offensive line that had gotten Williams killed the previous season was completely replaced. The results were immediate. Williams went from being sacked 68 times as a rookie to 24 times in his second season. The Bears finished first in pass block win rate. Williams threw for 3,942 yards, 27 touchdowns, and only 7 interceptions. He led 7 fourth-quarter comebacks, the most in the NFL. He broke the franchise single-season passing record. He became, for the first time, the quarterback everyone believed he could be when they made him the first overall pick. The Bears went 11-6. They won the NFC North. They beat the Packers in the wildcard round, their first playoff victory since 2010. They did everything a rebuild is supposed to do: find your quarterback, protect him, build an identity, make the playoffs, compete for championships. And then they ran into a team that never believed in rebuilding at all. The Los Angeles Rams have not had a losing season since 2016. In the 9 years since Sean McVay took over as head coach, the franchise has appeared in 2 Super Bowls, winning 1. They have made the playoffs 6 times. They have never, not once, decided that the future matters more than the present. This philosophy has a cost. The Rams have traded away first-round picks the way other teams trade away 7th-rounders. They acquired Matthew Stafford from Detroit in 2021 by sending away 2 first-round picks, a 3rd-round pick, and Jared Goff. They have consistently prioritized proven veterans over draft capital, immediate production over future potential. They have operated on the assumption that a franchise with a great quarterback, a great coach, and a culture of winning should never voluntarily enter a rebuilding phase. Stafford is 37 years old. He has been in the league for 16 seasons. He played all 17 games in 2025 for the first time since the Super Bowl season of 2021. He led the NFL in passing yards with 4,707 and passing touchdowns with 46. He posted the 2nd highest passer rating in the league. At an age when most quarterbacks are either retired or desperately clinging to backup roles, Stafford produced the best statistical season of his career. The Rams surrounded him with talent. Puka Nacua, their young receiver, caught 129 passes for 1,715 yards and 10 touchdowns. Davante Adams provided a veteran presence on the other side. Kyren Williams rushed for 1,252 yards and 10 touchdowns. The defense, rebuilt around young players like Jared Verse and Kobe Turner, forced 26 turnovers, fifth in the league. But here's what makes the Rams' approach genuinely unusual. They extended running back Kyren Williams, the first running back they have extended since Todd Gurley. They extended off-ball linebacker Nate Landman. They extended slot corner Quentin Lake. These are positions the Rams have historically treated as replaceable, positions where they would let players walk and find cheaper alternatives. Under McVay, the Rams had never extended a running back, an off-ball linebacker, or a slot corner. Now they extended all three. The reason is strategic. By pushing money into the future, the Rams have created flexibility in their salary cap. They have $81 million in cap space for 2026, potentially rising to $88 million if they release certain players. They have nearly $300 million in projected cap space for 2027. They have built a financial structure that allows them to keep their core together while Stafford plays out the final years of his career, then absorb his departure without collapsing into a rebuilding phase. The Rams are betting that they never have to tear it down. They are betting that smart roster construction, aggressive cap management, and a culture of winning can sustain a franchise indefinitely without ever accepting a lost season. They are betting that reload is always better than rebuild. The game itself was a test of these philosophies under pressure. Chicago's defense gave them every chance to win. They held the Rams to 20 points despite playing in frozen conditions that favored the visiting team. They forced Stafford into one of his worst statistical performances of the season, just 20 completions on 42 attempts for 258 yards, no touchdowns, no interceptions. The Bears' turnover differential, the best in the NFL at plus 22, had been their calling card all season. Force mistakes, create short fields, let Williams work magic in the fourth quarter. But Williams threw 3 interceptions. The first came on the opening drive, a pass intended for a receiver that cornerback Kobe Durant stepped in front of near the goal line. The second came in the third quarter, another Durant interception, this one in the red zone when the Bears were threatening to take control of the game. The third came in overtime, when Williams tried to hit DJ Moore on a deep route and safety Cameron Curl made a diving interception. The interceptions were not simply bad throws. They were the product of a young quarterback pressing, trying to make plays that were not there, fighting against a defense designed to take away exactly what he wanted to do. Williams threw 7 interceptions all season. He threw 3 in this single game. The Rams' defensive scheme, built around disruption and opportunism, found the weaknesses in his decision-making and exploited them. And yet Williams almost won anyway. Trailing 17-10 with under 2 minutes remaining, facing 4th and 4 from the Rams' 14-yard line, Williams threw a pass that should not have been completed. He was under pressure, fading away from the rush, throwing off his back foot toward the sideline. Tight end Cole Kmet somehow came down with it in the end zone. The game was tied with 18 seconds remaining. In overtime, the Bears forced a punt after the Rams failed to convert a first down on their opening drive. Chicago took over at their own 16-yard line and drove to the Rams' 48. They were in position to win. One more completion, maybe 2, and they would be in field goal range, headed to the NFC Championship game. Instead, Williams threw toward Moore, and Curl made the play that ended Chicago's season. The Rams drove 78 yards in 10 plays. Stafford completed first down passes to Colby Parkinson, Davante Adams, and Puka Nacua. Mevis kicked the field goal. McVay improved his career playoff record to 10-5. The Rams advanced to face Seattle. What does this game tell us about rebuild versus reload? The conventional analysis says the Rams' approach was validated. They won. They are moving on. The Bears are going home. Experience matters. Championship culture matters. Having a quarterback who has done this before matters. But the reality is more complicated. Williams is 24 years old. Stafford is 37. Williams is entering his 3rd season with a coach who transformed him from a sack-prone rookie into a franchise quarterback in a single offseason. Stafford is playing out the final years of a career that began in 2009. The Bears have their quarterback locked up on a rookie contract with years of cost-controlled production ahead. The Rams are paying Stafford elite money and will need to find his replacement within the next 2 or 3 seasons. The window comparison is instructive. Chicago's window is just opening. They found their quarterback. They found their coach. They made the playoffs in the first year of the new regime. They lost in the divisional round to a team with more experience, but they gained experience themselves. Williams now knows what playoff football feels like. He knows what it feels like to throw 3 interceptions in a game that matters. He knows what it feels like to make a miraculous 4th down throw and still lose. These lessons have value. The Rams' window is still open, but it is not getting wider. Stafford's health is a constant question. He dealt with a back injury that left his Week 1 status uncertain until late in the preseason. He played through a finger injury sustained in the wildcard round. He has been remarkably durable this season, but durability at 37 is not the same as durability at 27. Every season is a gift at this stage of a career. The Rams have built their financial structure to absorb Stafford's departure, but they have not found his replacement. They do not have a first-round pick to draft one. Their approach assumes they can either extend Stafford's career, find a veteran replacement, or draft a quarterback with mid-round capital. None of these paths is guaranteed. All of them require some combination of luck and skill that has eluded many franchises. The Bears' rebuild required patience that most organizations cannot sustain. They had to endure a 5-12 season while developing a first overall pick who was getting destroyed behind a terrible offensive line. They had to fire their head coach mid-season. They had to convince Ben Johnson, who had turned down multiple head coaching opportunities, that Chicago was the right place for him. They had to execute an aggressive offseason overhaul of the roster. Any number of things could have gone wrong. If Williams had been permanently damaged by his rookie season, if Johnson had chosen a different job, if the offensive line acquisitions had not worked out, rebuilds fail more often than they succeed, and the margin for error is thin. The Rams' reload requires a different kind of discipline. It requires identifying the right veterans to acquire and the right ones to let go. It requires managing the salary cap with precision, pushing money into the future without creating problems that cannot be solved. It requires drafting well in the middle rounds, since early round picks are often traded away. It requires a coach who can integrate new pieces into an existing system without losing the culture that makes the system work. Sean McVay has done all of these things, but McVay is an outlier. Most coaches cannot sustain this approach. Most front offices cannot execute it. There is a third possibility that neither philosophy fully accounts for. What if the best approach depends on circumstances that change from year to year? The Bears were right to rebuild. They had no quarterback, they had no coach, they had no identity. Trying to compete while those foundational pieces were missing would have wasted resources and extended the suffering. The rebuild allowed them to acquire Caleb Williams, to wait for the right coach, to accumulate the draft capital and cap space necessary to build a roster around them. The rebuild worked because the circumstances demanded it. The Rams were right to reload. They had a championship-caliber coach. They had a quarterback capable of playing at an MVP level. They had a culture of winning that players wanted to be part of. Tearing it down would have squandered assets that were still producing, alienated a fan base that expected contention, and created uncertainty that might have cost them McVay himself. The reload worked because the circumstances permitted it. The mistake is treating either approach as a universal principle. Some teams rebuild when they should reload. They trade away productive veterans for draft picks that never pan out. They embrace losing as a strategy rather than a temporary condition. They convince themselves that suffering now guarantees success later, when in fact, suffering now often just guarantees more suffering. Other teams reload when they should rebuild. They acquire expensive veterans to complement a core that is no longer competitive. They convince themselves that a few moves will return them to contention when the foundation has already crumbled. They extend the window of a team whose window has already closed, burning resources that could have been used to open a new one. The Bears and the Rams in this moment represent the best versions of their respective approaches. Chicago rebuilt correctly. They found their franchise quarterback, hired their franchise coach, and constructed a roster capable of competing immediately. Los Angeles reloaded correctly. They maximized the championship window, acquired talent that fit their system, and maintained a culture of winning despite the departure of key players from their Super Bowl team. The game on Sunday night was close because both teams are well constructed. The Rams won because their experience and their defensive scheme exploited the weaknesses of a young quarterback in his first high-leverage playoff road game. The Bears lost because Williams made mistakes that he will not make 2 or 3 years from now. The outcome was predictable in retrospect, but not inevitable in advance. What happens next will determine which approach was truly vindicated. If the Rams win the Super Bowl, the reload philosophy gets a trophy and a parade. If they lose in the NFC Championship or beyond, the conversation shifts to how many more chances Stafford has left. If the Bears return next season and advance further, the rebuild philosophy gets validated. If they regress, the conversation shifts to whether the 2025 season was a mirage, whether the underlying metrics that suggested they overperformed their talent were accurate after all. The truth is that both approaches can work, and both approaches can fail, depending on execution and circumstance. There is no universal answer to how to build a championship team. There is only the particular situation of each franchise, the particular players available, the particular coaches who might be hired, the particular market conditions that shape what is possible. The Bears made the right choice for their situation. The Rams made the right choice for theirs. They met on a frozen field in January, and one of them had to go home. That is not a verdict on philosophy. That is just football. Someone wins, someone loses, and the real work begins in the offseason, when both franchises will make the decisions that determine whether this season was the beginning of something or the end. For Chicago, the question is whether they can take the next step. Williams needs to eliminate the mistakes that cost them this game. The roster needs reinforcement in areas that were exposed. The cap situation, currently $14 million over, needs to be managed. But the foundation is in place. The quarterback is real. The coach is real. The culture is changing. For Los Angeles, the question is how long the window stays open. Stafford needs to stay healthy. The defense needs to maintain its level of play. The cap flexibility needs to be deployed wisely. And eventually, probably sooner than anyone in the organization wants to admit, they will need to find the next quarterback. When that day comes, the reload philosophy will face its greatest test. For now, the Rams advance, the Bears go home, and the argument between rebuild and reload continues, as it always has, without resolution, because there is no resolution to be found. There is only the next game, the next season, the next opportunity to prove that your approach was the right one all along.